Hello and welcome to Review. This episode, I'm joined by Josh.
Hello.
And this is the episode that'll let you know in future episodes when you see the two of us together, you're probably just going to want to click off because we're not going to be talking about the Goonies or whatever.
That's true.
Although I do love Goonies.
Me too.
But today we're talking about Eraserhead, David Lynch's seminal film, his first feature-length film.
It's one of my very favorites.
One of my absolute favorite movies too. Well, briefly, Eraserhead is technically about a man named Henry that accidentally impregnates his girlfriend. They find out the baby's going to be born deformed, which it is. It's the most horrifying thing ever.
Oh my God.
And she decides she can't handle it, so she leaves him.
Shut up! Shut up!
And things descend into madness from there.
Yeah.
That's the story of the movie. And the nice thing is there is a story.
Yes.
Because I sometimes get frustrated with movies that just get too lost in the abstract. And David Lynch is accused of that. And that movie specifically, people are like, oh, it's weird for the sake of weird, or it's all nonsense. Like, there is a pretty clear story.
Yeah.
As long as you have that through line that you can follow, or a character you can connect with, even if you don't necessarily understand everything surrounding it, you have something to grasp onto, and that's I think that's needed in a movie like this.
Absolutely, yeah, and like I agree with you. It's got that through line the whole way through, where you can just really nutshell. It's just like, this is a story about a guy who is not ready for marriage or parenthood.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other stuff that goes on.
Well, that was what was so surprising the first time I saw it, because I had heard, oh, it's this weird movie, it's lots of crazy visuals and nonsense, and you won't be able to make any sense of it. That's what I had heard for years. And then, so I was like surprised the first time I watched it, and I was like, I get this.
Yeah.
Like, and not in like an elitist, like, oh, I understand it. It's just like, it seems so clear to me.
Yeah, and there's certain stuff that you don't necessarily, is more abstract, like the man on the planet, or the lady in the radiator. But they still have their, you can kind of suss out what their general purpose is.
Yeah.
And again, it's window dressing to that main story.
Right. I still have no idea why the fuck the lady in the radiator has the giant cheeks. I have no idea what that might potentially mean, but
it's fun.
It's fun.
It's fun. I don't know.
It's interesting though. The first time I watched it, my general interpretation was like, yeah, I was like, oh, this is clearly about the anxiety of becoming a parent when you're not ready to.
Oh, you are sick.
And in rewatching it just now, like, and this is the great thing about the movie, is you kind of, it's open to interpretation. People always say that, but it's true. Where this last time I was watching it, it wasn't so much about that specifically. It felt more just like a general anxiety of, like, settling, is how I saw it. Like,
sure.
Like he impregnates his girlfriend. You get the impression that they're not really that connected. Like. He clearly has an awkward relationship with her family in the greatest dinner scene ever put on film.
Just cut them up like regular chickens? Sure, just cut them up like regular chickens.
That was one of the scenes where I could definitely kind of gauge as I saw it as the years have gone on, like how my reaction has changed to it. Initially, I was like, "Oh, this is just wacky, hilarious. Like, there's the chickens and they're man-made, but they're new." And watching it now at a later age, it's horrifying.
You'll be all right in a minute.
Like the,
Yeah.
the whole thing, apart from like a little, little things here and there, like, want to see my knees? Are you hungry?
Well,
Like,
it's also it's a funny movie too,
Yeah.
and that's I think when sometimes people when they talk about David Lynch, they talk about the abstract elements or the creepier elements because there's shit in his movies that is far scarier than anything in a more traditional horror movie.
God.
But I think sometimes people don't point out how funny his movies are too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some really funny stuff in this.
Even in the initial scenes where Henry's just walking through the industrial landscape, it's a very Chaplin kind of thing where he's just kind of walking along like this, and the Fats Waller music is playing. It's just like this is kind of light fun until things start happening.
Yeah.
But it's definitely kind of got that undercurrent all the way through.
Even some of just the visuals where it's like trying to explain why something is funny is nearly impossible.
Yeah.
Just because it's so subjective. But like when he's at the beginning, he's walking through the industrial landscape. He goes into his apartment building and gets in the elevator. And the doors just don't close. And like don't close, and it just holds on it. And then finally they close. And that's funnier. Like the Hangover movies don't make me laugh, but just those elevator doors closing.
Just that anticipation of just, yeah, absolutely. And that actually speaks to another quality of the film that I really like, is that it's very, very deliberate, and it feels that way not in a showy way, like look at this, watch what's going to happen, but just. This is everything in that movie happens when it's supposed to. All the cuts.
Yeah, that's something else I noticed in rewatching it that I didn't quite pick up on as strongly before, is how precise it all is. From the cinematography, which is gorgeous black and white, but it's all the shots are locked down. They're very sort of stark.
Yeah.
And the precision of the editing, it's very like mannered in a way that David Lynch's later movies are more fluid, I would say. Like there's a lot more kind of floaty camera work, and they don't feel like this movie. It feels like you're like confined in a tiny box.
There's a baby. It's at the hospital.
Mom!
And you're the father.
That's impossible. It's only
Mother,
been...
they're still not sure it is a baby.
It's premature, but there's a baby.
So let's talk a bit about the baby.
Oh God.
They're not even sure it is a baby. Which, again, initially it was just like, that line's funny. Like, no, that line's not funny.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Oh, no.
Yeah, and I believe, like, David Lynch has never explained how they did it. Yeah, isn't the myth or the legend that it was like a calf, like a dead calf or something?
There are speculations that it's a calf or a rabbit or a lamb. It's too real. I mean, it's not.
It doesn't look like a puppet. I mean,
No.
it moves kind of like a puppet, but it looks so fleshy and gross.
Yeah, but at the end, when Henry discovers that the bandages are actually the thing that's keeping it together, that's amazingly just like. I mean, and it's a black and white movie, but it's gory. And and it's just like everything's.
And you can kind of smell it when he opens it. It's like the smell comes through your television.
Yeah. The sounds are reportedly recordings of David Lynch's daughter, Jennifer.
The idea that is his actual child making those noises adds just like another layer to the movie, considering what the movie's about. When people talk about how they miss practical effects, everybody brings up movies like The Thing and all these 80s things. No one ever mentions the creepy baby from Eraserhead. It's like the most convincing thing.
It is, and there's no point until like the very end where all of a sudden the head is the size of the room. Well, it's like, well, that's...
then it kind of looks a little like paper mache.
That's pretty comical. But even before that, when the head is like, the neck is just stretching across the room.
Yeah.
Like, that looks real enough to me. Let's talk about Jack Nance, though.
Oh, sure. Jack Nance, this is the role he was born to play.
Absolutely.
He is Eraserhead.
Yeah. Yeah, he kept that. The movie was shot over 5 years. Legendarily, they kept running out of funding to finish the movie, and he kept his hair like that the entire 5 years. Like, that's
dedication.
Exactly. He's so perfect in the role. He's so awkward and passive, and just things are happening, and he has no idea what to do at hardly any point.
Yeah.
To the point where when they first are back in the apartment married with the baby, and he lies down on his bed, like smiling, like that's kind of unsettling. I don't feel like he should be that comfortable at any point during the movie, and it's the only time he really is.
I was gonna say, yeah, no one really, except for the lady in the radiator, which we can talk about her in a bit, but yeah, everybody just looks miserable all the time.
Oh, and Mary's dad.
Well, and Mary's dad, but there's clearly something off about him.
That's like a rictus grin. This is, hey.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not happiness. That's mental illness.
Well, that seems apropos for this movie, really, in a way. But yeah, nobody's normal. The closest you get is the attractive woman across the hall, and she's almost feels like she's a cipher or something, where she's something that has to happen. Yeah. Rather than anything of a character.
Yeah, she's not really a person. She's more of an ideal. And that's what I'm thinking of what I was saying earlier about the movie feeling, in rewatching it, more about just like settling in general, which also ties in with The Lady in the Radiator, which I used to kind of see, and it's almost too literal, because like she's singing, you know, she has that awesome song.
Yes.
In heaven, everything is fine. And so I always kind of saw her as more like his only way out is suicide, is to just kill himself. And that's how I used to see her. And now rewatching it, it was like more, it's just a general figure of hope.
Yes.
Like in thinking about the woman across the hall, and then, you know, and then we go to the lady in the radiator, and she's the only one smiling, and the little spermy guys fall from the ceiling, and she steps on them. Like, no kids around here.
Got it all wrapped up.
And so it's like, oh yeah, she's just a general figure of hope.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that for sure. Hope and escape.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens right then when like Henry is married with the baby, and that's the first time he sees the lady in the radiator. He doesn't. The stage lights up, so it's almost just like a harbinger of like something's going to happen back here.
Yeah.
And that as things get worse, he's retreating more into that world. And you could also interpret, you know, at the very end, you know, they embrace. It's like he's done well, and hope has come to take him away.
Or he killed himself.
Or
it could go either way.
Could be both. Exactly. There aren't a lot of things in this movie that could be specifically like, that's what that is.
Well, and it shouldn't be. There's nothing more boring than someone dissecting a movie in the most literal way possible, where they're like, this represents this, and this symbolizes, like, there's nothing interesting about that.
Yeah.
Like let your mind play.
But as long as we're talking about the world of the movie, we could talk about the sound.
Well, that's the other major, that's a supporting role in the movie.
It is.
The sound.
It's revolutionary. I mean, there was nothing else like that before.
Yeah.
They spent a year doing the sound design for the movie. Lynch and Alan Splett, I believe is how you pronounce. I'm sure that's how you pronounce it.
Is he dead now?
Yeah, he died a long time ago.
They're all dead now.
I know. It is another character in the movie where it's always there. It's there more than anybody else in the movie. It's there more than Henry.
It's true. Yeah.
There's always. It's rarely quiet, and when it's quiet, it means to be quiet. it's a pointed quiet.
Yeah. It's just so, it's unsettling in a way where sometimes you kind of forget that it's there, like consciously, but in your brain somewhere you know it's there.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden it starts ratcheting up, and the layers start building, and then everything's worse. I don't know if we want to talk about some of the more abstract visuals. I mean, the whole title of the movie is this sort of thing that happens in the middle that isn't necessarily related to anything.
That's the part that loses me a bit. Like,
Yeah.
I like that whole sequence, but I'm kind of like, how does this tie in?
I don't think it does. It's just a little digression. It's just
Yeah.
like, this is what happens to Henry's head after the baby knocks it off of his body. Sure. You know, I don't know if it, I mean, that's the thing, you can't know if it actually relates because you're not supposed to know, but it's just, it adds to the general flavor of the overall stew.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah. And the opening of the movie, the first 5-7 minutes or so, the way I see it, it's the weirdest sex scene ever put on film.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's the impregnation of Mary. It's
Yeah.
just like Henry's floating head, sperm comes out of his mouth, drops into like a crater on Mars or whatever the fuck. It's like,
That's
oh,
what happens when the man in the world pulls the levers.
That's, yeah.
And then the sperm goes splat into the puddle.
And that's your David Lynch sex scene.
Yeah, but yeah, and that's what shoots us into that world is you've got images that are somewhat abstract, but at least you can still sort of pick up that's what's happening before things get, you know, normal and then really abstract.
Yeah.
It definitely makes sure you're comfortable in the world before things start getting real weird.
Yeah, which I think is important because there's some movies where it starts and you're just like, what is this?
Yeah.
You know, you need to ease people in. At least have a character that you can understand, even if you don't understand necessarily what's happening around him.
Yes.
There's still that character to connect with.
Yeah, and Henry's definitely the everyman.
Yeah. You just want to see him break free. Even in his apartment, he looks out the window and it's just a brick wall.
Oh boy. And yeah, he's just so unsure at all times. And that, I think, is an easily relatable thing. I mean, if something weird is happening in your life, most people don't necessarily know exactly what to do right away, if ever.
Sure.
And so you're kind of faced with, and you've got to take a while. And that's basically the whole movie is Henry trying to figure out what to do next. And
Yeah, everyone can relate to being stuck in a rut. And if you're the kind of person that thinks the idea of like settling down and getting married and having children sounds like a horrible fucking nightmare, then this movie's for you.
It's true.